Donald Trump just made a historic mistake. He turned his dream of buying Greenland into a direct confrontation with the entire European Union and NATO. As we all know, Greenland used to be a weird Trump meme, a crazy Trump idea from 2019 that everyone laughed at and then forgot. But now it's very much back again. Only this time no one is laughing. It is economic warfare by the United States against its closest allies, including the UK, Denmark, Sweden, Finland and France. Trump has announced new tariffs on countries that support Denmark and Greenland. 10% tariffs from the 1st of February and then 25% by June if they don't comply. All because they refused to sell part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And with regards to the allies, it was all because they participated in a military exercise to make Greenland a safer place, just like Trump wanted it. This man is truly confused. What Trump and his staff did not understand is that Denmark did something extremely clever. Denmark turned the Greenland problem into a European Union problem. And that changes everything. In this video, I will explain why Denmark's move was very smart in my opinion, why Trump is playing a game he cannot win, why he is inflicting massive damage on the United States and its allies, and why this might be the perfect moment for the European Union to finally say no to Trump and put its foot down. I'm Stephen Nikander Højlund, a Danish social science PhD with a keen interest in foreign policy. Let's get into it. Let's start with the basics. Greenland is not just some big piece of empty ice, it is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. And Denmark is a member of NATO and the European Union's single market and customs union. In EU law, trade policy is not something each country in the European Union does on its own. The EU acts with one voice in trade matters. That means when you threaten Denmark with tariffs, you are effectively threatening the entire EU trade bloc. Denmark knows this very well. So instead of trying to handle Trump on its own, Copenhagen made sure that Greenland was framed first as a NATO issue and then as a European issue. Why is that clever? Because it immediately raises the cost for Trump and the United States. He is no longer bullying a small Scandinavian country, he is challenging the economic and political authority of the European Union. And the EU has a completely different set of tools. First of all, it has the world's second largest economy. It controls access to the European single market. And it has a new anti-coercion instrument designed as a result of the Trump's tariff policy imposed in his first period. So by Europeanizing the Greenland issue, Denmark basically enlarged the playing field. They redirected his aggression onto a much bigger, much stronger opponent. To really understand why this is such a big deal for the EU, we need to go back to why the Union exists in the first place. The European community was created in 1957 after two world wars that started in Europe. Its core mission was simple but powerful: peace through trade. The idea was that if European countries were deeply integrated economically, they would stop killing each other. Trade, shared rules and common institutions would replace tanks and trenches essentially. Now think about what Trump is doing right now. He is using tariffs to pressure a European country over territory. He is saying, sell Greenland or I will hurt your economy and the economies of your friends. That crosses a fundamental red line for the European Union. The European Union was founded exactly to avoid war and aggression over territory. The EU can negotiate on steel, cars, agriculture, regulations, all that is normal trade conflict, but it cannot allow economic warfare against a member state because it refuses to give up territory. That would destroy the principle of sovereignty at the heart of the European Union. If the EU lets this pass, what message does it send to all aggressors, but also internally in the Union? It would send the signal that a foreign leader can blackmail Europe into redrawing borders. Basically, that you can punish an EU country until it gives up territory or changes its foreign policy. Then what stops China from trying this with Eastern Europe or Russia with the Baltics? Once this door is open, the whole European security model collapses. So for the EU, this is not just another Trump tariff story. This is litmus test for whether Europe still believes in its own founding principles. Let's talk about Trump's strategy, because on the paper it sounds strong. Punish the disobedient and weak European allies and force them to make a deal. But here's the catch. He is playing a game that has no possible winning outcome. First, Greenland is not for sale. Not to Trump, not to anyone in fact. Both Denmark and the Greenlandic government have said this very clearly. And even if Mark Rutte, Keir Starmer or Ursula von der Leyen give way to Trump, Greenland is still not for sale.
Belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
No Danish government can politically survive selling off Greenland. It would be seen as national betrayal. And no Greenlandic leadership could survive agreeing to be bought. So Trump's base assumption is fundamentally wrong. This is not a negotiation about price. It was never a negotiation, even at the meeting in Washington with the foreign ministers. This is about sovereignty, and sovereign questions are not solved with tariffs, threats of aggression or threats with tariffs. So what does it mean in practice? It means that he can escalate on tariffs, he can shout louder, he can threaten more countries, but the core answer will still be no. So the only real outcome of this strategy is self-harm. The US doesn't get Greenland no matter, but it does get higher tariffs, more expensive imports, angry and betrayed allies, and a weaker NATO and probably the end of NATO. That's not really the art of the deal. That's just burning down bridges and isolating the United States with severe consequences for the American people. Let's zoom in for a moment and focus on the damage Trump is doing right now to the United States and to NATO. Because this is not just about feelings. There are very real economic security costs. Economically, tariffs are taxes on your own consumers and businesses. American companies that import European machinery, parts, medicines, and consumer goods will pay much more. Just to take one example, American farmers are already suffering from previous trade wars. They relied on export markets in Europe and China. We have already seen years where US farmers needed massive bailouts because of tariffs. More tariffs on close allies just add another layer of uncertainty. And then there's also the security side. Trump is targeting NATO allies. These are the same countries the US relies on for military cooperation, intelligence and support against Russia. Punishing your own allies because they won't give you territory is strategically insane. It sends one clear message. The United States under Trump is an unreliable partner at best. And who benefits from that? Russia and China. Russia and China don't even need to do anything. They just sit back and watch the US pick a trade fight with its own friends. Every time Trump attacks NATO allies, Moscow smiles. Because the more divided the West is, the less effective it becomes in dealing with real threats. So Trump's Greenland policy doesn't just fail to deliver Greenland. It actively weakens the very alliance that keeps Russia away from places like the Baltics and Eastern Europe. And that should really worry us, and that obviously worries people in Europe. The USA has become a rogue state, a threat to the democratic world order. While the Romans kept the Pax Romana for almost 1,000 years, the Americans only managed to keep Pax Americana and superpower status for 35 years, so just a small blip in the footnotes of history books. The short American dominance on the world stage will go into history as a curiosity like Nero or Caligula about how a deranged sociopath managed to crash an empire in just 300 days. But let's get back to present time. Let's get back to Denmark. Because while Denmark is tiny, what they did was very smart statecraft. By pushing the Greenland question into the EU framework, Denmark did three things. First, it spread the risk. If Denmark faced Trump alone, it would be much easier for him to apply pressure. The power imbalance is huge among the two countries. But by anchoring the issue in EU trade competence, every attack on Denmark becomes an attack on the EU's rules and institutions. Second, it forced everyone to take a position. EU leaders can no longer pretend this is a bilateral thing between Denmark and the United States. If tariffs hit France, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands and Finland, they all have skin in the game now. Solidarity stops being a nice word in speeches and becomes a concrete decision now. Third, it touched down in the foundations of Europe's soul, namely the trauma of the Second World War and the terror caused by fascism. In other words, European leaders will be heavily inclined to act against this threat, as the very foundation the European Union is made of is being threatened now. What is the European Union if it cannot fend off a threat by a fascist regime? Then we are back to Chamberlain with peace in our time. Like Hitler in the Czech Republic or Putin in Ukraine, Trump will not stop at Greenland. Next up will be French Guadeloupe, British Virgin Islands or Dutch Aruba. Canada is an obvious one. Trump's only valid argument for wanting Greenland is, "I want it." At least Russia is always clever enough to build a serious pretext by issuing Russian passports to people across the borders and claiming Russian minority protection when they want a piece of land. But of course, Trump doesn't have time for all that, as the 250th anniversary of the United States is coming up very soon and he needs Greenland to celebrate. So to put it short, Denmark turned Trump's aggression into a stress test for the European sovereignty. If Europe passes the test, it comes out much stronger. If it fails, then we have a much bigger problem in my point of view. This brings us to the final point of the video. This is not just about defending Denmark. It's about deciding what kind of actor Europe wants to be in the world. For years, European leaders have talked about strategic autonomy, about being less dependent on the US, and also about being able to stand up to economic blackmail from big powers. But every time Trump threatened tariffs in the past, the US mostly tried to calm things down. Europe is always playing the role of the adult in the room. European leaders know the cost that escalation will bring to both American consumers and the European consumers and businesses. It's not weakness, it's just rational consideration in benefit of the common good. Compromise, avoid escalation, buy time towards a midterm election in the US or until Trump dies of a heart attack. Tell him what he wants to hear and appease him. Now that strategy has reached its limits, because this time the issue is not just about the price on soybeans and steel, it's sovereignty and territory. If Europe gives in here, then every future US president and every other major power learns the same lesson, that the EU will crumble but eventually fold, that you can use tariffs to bully European democracies. So this might be the moment where Europe has to say no. No, you do not get to blackmail an EU country over territory. You do not get to punish our single market for respecting international law. And here's the interesting twist. Saying no to Trump is not anti-American, it's actually pro-Western. Because a world where the US and the EU both respect rules, sovereignty and alliances is healthier for everyone, including Americans. A world where the US bullies its allies and weakens NATO is only good for Russia and China. So by standing firm now, Europe is not just defending itself, it is also defending the idea of a rule-based order that the US itself helped create. Finally, let's imagine Trump doubles down. He raises tariffs to 25% or 30% or 40%, it doesn't matter. He attacks European leaders on social media. He calls them weak, ungrateful, freeloaders, whatever. Then what happens exactly? Europe will be hurt economically. Yes, some sectors will suffer, exports will drop, tensions will rise overall. But Europe has many means to retaliate. It can target politically sensitive US exports. It can use its anti-coercion instrument, the so-called bazooka, to restrict access to the single market, and it can accelerate plans to build alternatives to US technology and finance. The US, on the other hand, loses more than just money. It loses trust, which is very hard to get back again. It loses influence as well. It loses the moral high ground it once had when talks about democracy and alliances were at stake. And Trump still doesn't get Greenland. So the endgame for Trump here is basically he doesn't get Greenland, NATO is weakened, and the US and the EU economy stands to weaken. It's a geopolitical gift to Moscow and Beijing. That is what losing big time looks like in geopolitical terms. Let me finally share my personal take here. As a Dane, this hits very close to home, obviously. Denmark is a small country. We survive and thrive because we are part of something bigger, the EU, NATO, and the Western community altogether. I'm actually not so worried about Greenland or Denmark. Trump can only get Greenland by sending an invading force, and I don't think he will do that. I'm more worried about Europe. This is actually a serious test for Europe. The European Union needs to step up and say clear no to the United States. Don't repeat the mistakes of the past, sending mixed signals to authoritarian rulers that we give way when they push. The red line has already been overstepped many times, and Trump has already undermined trust in the United States so much. But European populations and small member states will also start distrusting the EU if it cannot even defend its core values. Then it would have failed completely. But let me know what you think. Should the EU use its full force to push back against Trump's Greenland tariffs, or should Europe keep trying to avoid escalation at all costs? Please subscribe to the channel if you want more deep dives into Denmark, Europe, and how global politics affect our everyday lives. And share this video with a friend who still thinks Greenland is just about ice and polar bears. Because right now, Greenland might be where Europe finally decides to say no. Thank you for watching.